We stand here today to call on our legislators to fund Medicaid without restrictions, or in other words, to do your job. Do your job!
That was the message Medicaid advocates had for lawmakers. Marsha Craner was a part of that rally because of personal experience. Her son suffers from hemophilia.
His medicine is very expensive. He used up his lifetime max of our insurance by the time he was 16. And we had trouble finding other insurance because of pre-existing conditions. We tried the high-risk pool in Idaho and were rejected because of the expense.
It took 3 years to get on federal Medicaid, and to do that, he had to be declared disabled, which brings a lot of restrictions, like limiting his work hours. Marsha says the expansion would mean everything to people like her son.
It would be huge. I mean, right now he's going to school because that's something he can do. When he gets out of school, he wants to be able to find a career and live like a normal person. So it would just change his whole life.
I met a woman in October who had just been diagnosed with cancer. She had 2 young children. She was going to have to either move to Montana or Washington to get treatment or divorce her husband to qualify financially for treatment. You know, those are the people that this is going to help.
But when it comes to the legislature, lawmakers are considering both sides of the coin.
What happens somewhere down the road if the federal government changed it from a 90-10 ratio of participation of federal to state dollars to 70-30 or something? And that would be literally hundreds of millions of dollars to the state of Idaho that you'd have to come up with some way. That's the only part that really bothers me that much about the expansion.
Lawmakers say they do support the initiative and want it to move forward, staying close to what voters want.
Well, that's what we're looking at now. What's the best way to fund this without putting a particular burden on the citizens of Idaho? And so it's not just as easy as just letting it become law. We need to find the funds in order to make it effective as well.
Well, I think it'll move forward. You know, I personally want to try and get it as close to what the initiative is as possible. That may look a little different than what the people that supported the initiative wants it to be, but I'd like to see it get out of here. I'd like to see it get it funded, and I don't think we should wait.
There we have it from our news partners at Channel 7. Kevin Miller in the morning here talking about Medicaid expansion. And yes, the stories continue. And one thing that I don't understand, on one hand, we have real people suffering with real issues, and then we have the medical industrial complex continuing to build new facilities, massive ornate structures dedicated to the expense that we fund day in and day out, while people have to get divorces, people have to live below the poverty level. And then you have, as Senator Winder pointed out, what happens when the feds switch it from 90-10 to 50-50? We've got issues. Pete in Mountain Home joining Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning, Kevin. Happy birthday, and I promise not to try to sing the song, which would be horrible.
I appreciate that, Pete.
2 things I'd like to point out. Hugo Chavez came to power in Venezuela first by promising free medical care for everybody. And it kind of went downhill from there because that started bankrupting them. And they funded it from other people's money, which ran out. And then secondly, tonight, when you're watching the State of the Union, I want you to watch Nancy Pelosi and see whether or not she reminds you of a very, very, very upset little 3-year-old in a pout with her arms crossed and her lips pouting. I'm willing to bet that she will remind you of a 3-year-old.
Well, and, and here's the deal. The president has reached out, and sooner or later he's going to say, I'm tired of being a bad guy. I'm tired of everything else. If you're going to call me a bad guy, Pete, then bring it on.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. Well, you remember those cards I sent you? I would like to apologize to all those I have not yet offended.
Right.
Please be patient. Well, you're doing a good job there, Kevin, and keep up the good work, and happy birthday again.
Well, thank you, Pete. God bless.
God bless you, sir.
All right, our great friend Pete from Mountain Home, from Ohio, where I hear all good things come from. Anyway, phone numbers, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. This is a nonpartisan issue. When we're looking at the expansion of Medicaid, you've got 300 people telling the legislators to do their job. Now, with all due respect to the demonstrators, the only way you're going to get these folks to do their job is when there's an election year. And yes, we have the Idaho Freedom Foundation and Attorney Clark or Attorney Smith or Smith and Clark or whomever suing to make sure that this doesn't happen. But this is what we elect public servants to do. They promise they're going to work for us, and then it's like a lot of things. Maybe it's a business deal, maybe it's a personal deal in your life, the bait and the switch. You ever look at a job and they promise you all these great things and the grass is always greener and I'm going to say, hey, blah, 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 and then you get there and it's the bait and the switch? The older I get, the more I feel life is about the bait and the switch. So the legislators, and we have a lot of conservatives that are shunned and shut down. And then we have the pragmatists, the moderates, the libs. And we have the marginalized Democrats off in the corner. They're pouting, calling Nancy Pelosi for advice on how they can make themselves relevant here in the state of Idaho. But when you're talking about taking care of someone, nothing more personal. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a child and then you go in and the first thing they do, and maybe I'm wrong to blame the medical providers when you go in and the first thing they do is, hey, your copay is this, is that cash credit charge? I thought it was about keeping people healthy, but that's the way our system is set up. And whether we blame the insurance companies, whether we blame the incompetence, I don't know if it's the cover-up or just the serial incompetence that goes with the federal government. And when we're talking about health care for all, who's going to pay for it? How many times have we looked at our own insurance rates that have gone up again and again and again? I don't really know what the demonstrators want the legislators to do. They're slow walking everything. I'm still waiting for a hearing to repeal the grocery tax. And I have many people comment to me publicly and privately, Kevin Miller, you're wrong. The state can't afford it. So just because the state says we can't afford it, we're supposed to take them at their word. This is the same state of Idaho. And again, if you're new to the state, here's a primer of the past 4 or 5 years of political history. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We needed to raise the gas tax to fund the roads. Now, you're driving in on State Street. Have the roads gotten any better on State Street? By the way, could we spend some money and get the orange barrels a little brighter? They seem to be faded and dulled. I almost crashed into them this morning. And how about painting the concrete so it's not so dark when it's dark? Put some reflective tape on it, guys. Let's try and help the people that are actually funding the projects that are paying for everybody's salaries. And again, no disrespect to the people that are working in this mess. Hard-working people to be outside doing this in this weather or even in the oppressive summer heat. My point being that we hear from our politicians all the time that beg, clamor, and plead for our vote that they're going to represent us. Well, I'd like some adequate representation. I believe, and we hope to have a better relationship with Governor Little than we did with Governor Otter, former Governor Otter. But you know something? We're in the people business, not the politician business. My suggestion is if we believe House Majority Leader Mike Moyle, if we are to believe him and House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding, that there will be no repeal of the grocery tax this year because we can't afford it, then somebody needs to hold a news conference and answer the questions. From the highly affluent and ever vaunted, self-reporting Idaho Press Club. Right? The people of Idaho need answers. And quite frankly, any politician is welcome on this program. All they have to do is call Ray Amaya or email me. Not that tough to get on this program and explain why this doesn't happen. So back to the funding issue here in the state of Idaho. A few years ago, we needed roads. So we raised the gas tax. Did you know when they did it? They didn't do it in January or February. They did it on the last hour of the last day. They even went into overtime to pass the gas tax because it was so unpopular. Now, life here in Idaho is so cool. We usually forget and forgive our politicians after they do us the one-over. after they kick us where it counts. So we just kind of sit back and let it go. So then we had, again, the grocery tax repeal came up, got out of committee, and then the governor pulled his shenanigans at the time, Governor Otter. That went down. And then during the campaign, we've heard we're going to repeal the grocery tax. Well, we don't. We can't make it happen. There was one show, and you are a part of it, because there's no difference between you and me. We're in this together. We are the conduit of conservatism in the Treasure Valley. There were one group of people that said, why is the state of Idaho buying the HP campus on Chinden? And then we urged the people that were running the HP campus, I guess HP, to mow the lawn and be a responsible neighbor. If the HP campus was in your neighborhood, the HOA would have fined them out of existence because they didn't care. They just wouldn't mow the lawn. And I had HP apologists calling in saying, well, it's back to its natural look. I go, really? Watch out if that ever catches fire. I digress. So the state of Idaho that is, $40, $50, $60 million short this year, I still don't know how that happens. And by the way, there's a blog about it at KIDOTalkRadio.com, wondering where the repeal of the grocery tax is. The state of Idaho that is $60 million short had no problem outbidding our good friend, Dr. Tommy Ahlquist, now with Ball Venture Ahlquist and Associates. No problem outbidding his bid for the HP campus. He's a developer by, $35 million, which he exclusively disclosed on this program. And then when you look at the buildings of the HP, and we've had people that have worked there, they're decrepit, they need a lot of work, so they have to get up to code. You've got, I think, problems with asbestos or something like that in some of them because they've been not used for so many years. So the state has to build it. And then we have people saying, well, the state is going to save a lot of money. Well, good for the state of Idaho. And good for the people that work in Idaho and everything else. And I'm not here to pick on anybody that works for the state. However, we are an advocate for taxpayers, and everybody pays taxes. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we've elected people to represent us. Let's see how the sausage is made. I'd like to know when the repeal of the grocery tax is going to come aboard. I'd like to know how the state is going to pay for the funding of Medicaid expansion. And by the way, we're talking about just, cutting a bunch of services and expanding the money paid for education. Otherwise, we're going to have the levy of the week, which folks in West Ada and Nampa and Fruitland and in other places can attest to. That's what I'd like to see from our local government. All right, you've heard enough of me. Your call's next to 580-5436, 580-KIDO. It comes down to Medicaid expansion. When are they going to fund it? And B, do you buy the argument made by state lawmakers that they can't afford to repeal the grocery tax? But maybe next year, as I said at the start of this segment, it's an election year. Bet it happens then. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the great job. Honored to have you on our station. You ever notice, first of all, we'd love to get your calls on the repeal of the grocery tax and the funding of Medicaid by the state. Maybe you're happy with how things are going. Me, I think we could do better. I know we could do better. By the way, for those of you that are a little younger, there used to be a thing called commercials in television. The days before we had a DVR or VCR or anything else, we had to watch them. In fact, commercials were at a premium. And, of course, the biggest premium was the Super Bowl. And every year, another way that the NFL gets people to watch their show, to be a part of the Super Bowl, is you don't have to be a football fan to enjoy the Super Bowl. You watch the commercials. Some of my favorite commercials of all time, light beer from Miller, where you would have former football stars saying, one would say less filling, the other one would say tastes great. Yes, I know it was the entertaining world before the internet, and us old people, just that's how we got along. That was our entertainment. Well, or the United Way. I think the best campaign ever for the NFL and for the United Way, because of you, it works for all of us, the United Way. And you can Google these ads on YouTube and see them, and they're just, today, they're still relevant. Well, the Super Bowl recently, we just had the Super Bowl. New England Patriots won. And there are a bunch of ads on them, and everybody goes, hey, what's your favorite ad? Now, for me, I don't think you can bet celebrating 100 years of the National Football League, where you have stars old and new acting like little kids, self-deprecating humor. Nothing beats self-deprecating humor. But on the other side of the spectrum, from the Daily Caller, you've got Super Bowl advertisers use their massive platforms to lecture Americans on a number of topics, from using clean energy and respecting the media to the proper treatment of mermaids in the age of Me Too. Let's start with Girls Playing Football by Budweiser.
Super Bowl.
Now back to the ad.
Did the alligator eat anybody?
When girls face their challenges, they're stronger. When girls work together, they realize their value. When girls get to play, they learn to win.
So here we have it where we have big, bad NFL players going up against a girls' peewee football team. And there just doesn't seem to be a safe place for men anymore. And by the way, we have the report from Channel 7 that nobody in Idaho is playing football. Where they got that one from was Real Sports on HBO saying nobody's playing football anymore. I bet if you call Rocky Mountain, I bet if you call Mountain View High School, you'd get the other side of the story. A lot of people are playing football. Football is so popular, they're trying to make it so girls can play football. So this commercial is unrealistic. Most men can't play professional or collegiate football. Most people want to play football until they get hit a few times. And whether you've had your elbow dislocated, your shoulder separated, a few of the injuries that I had when I was a lot more athletic than I am now, you understand where I'm coming from. But again, I agree with the Daily Caller on this. I want something to make me think. I don't really want propaganda, so we continue on. And so there we have the girl power. And a lot of people are going to go, Kevin, what's the big deal? So in the age of Me Too, now we have the mermaids on how to negotiate with sharks.
I'm Bonnie. I'm Vivian. And we're the makers of Bon and Viv Spiked Seltzer. It's sparkling water and alcohol. It comes in fruit botanicals like pear elderflower with 0 grams of sugar. Yeah, seems too good to be true. But let us tell you, the myth is real. What do you think, sharks?
I'm in. I want in too.
I'll double their offer.
Hey, this is my expertise.
No, don't double them. Go with me.
And that's a play off the popular Shark Tanks. Like I said, it makes you wonder why the ratings were so low. I think the commercials should serve a purpose of promoting a product, not promoting public policy. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio.
7's Eric Everett.
And I'm Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Again, I go back to these commercials. Now you have Google talking about the importance of translation and how we all need to get along and be happy and that sort of thing. Never mind the issues when we're talking about being divisive or heated or that sort of thing. And then, I don't know if you saw it, we've got the police in riot gear. Why do we have to show police in a negative light? The Washington Post, according to the Daily Caller, topped them all, talking about journalists that have been killed in the field for doing their jobs, and including Jamal Khashoggi. Of course, Khashoggi was killed because he believed the Saudi ambassador's brother, or the Saudi king's brother, that he would not be killed for writing bad things about the Saudi Arabians. By the way, I would have liked to have seen Daniel Pearl on there. You remember Daniel Pearl, who lost his life to ISIS. And remember, journalism itself rightfully has been under siege for being what? Non-objective, subjective in its coverage. Just look at what happens with the president, the State of the Union, and the border wall. It's immoral. Why? Because Nancy Pelosi says it's immoral. Not without any factual basis. In fact, I love when the Democrats have their talking points, because what do they say? Well, if we let the border guards handle it. You've heard border guards on this program tell you to our face, saying, Kevin Miller, we can't stop the wave after wave of people coming into America. We don't have the funding. We don't have the facilities. We don't have the resources. We don't have the wall. And this is where the battle for the hearts and minds and the future of our great country will be determined. We started this segment talking about the grocery tax repeal. We started this segment talking about the expansion of Medicaid and people saying, do your job. Well, okay. Besides Tea Party Bob, Steve Ackerman, and myself, has anybody realistically looked at how big of an economic healthcare bomb funding the Medicaid expansion will be? And by the way, does anybody really believe that the federal government isn't going to pull the bait and switch when they switch it from 90 federal to 10 state to 50-50 or even verse going 10 federal and 90 state? The state of Idaho doesn't have the resources for that unless they cut a massive amount of social programs. Heck, we had the best year economically, and we have a $60 million shortfall that no one can explain, except in the dead of night, actually in a non-legislative session, we approved the purchase of the HP campus because the lawmakers in Boise wanted it. That's why it's so crucial that we stay together and we continue to hold them accountable. We go away, their free ride, there goes the last road bump. And instead of going 30 miles an hour in your neighborhood, they're going 70. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's find out what's happening in your world. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
And coming up, can candy be dangerous? Well, you won't believe this one. And by the way, another state wants to legalize mushrooms. We first disclosed that the state of Oregon was looking at doing that. Now another state, unfortunately, this one in the West is looking to legalize the shrooms and not the ones you get at the steakhouse. Joining us now, Tanya J. Powers, allegedly joining us east of the Great River. I always want to say allegedly because we do our very best to have the highest AP style book journalistic integrities here on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, and it's not allegedly. I actually am in New York City.
I can't really confirm that. I'm not seeing you, so I'm going to be safe.
Okay, well, I just confirmed it for you. So,
but you need to have more than one source.
You need. Well, as long as we're holding you to the highest journalistic standards, I think we're in the right spot.
Fair enough. I do try. Now, I'm going to get personal with you for a minute.
You know I love that.
I know. Well, I didn't call you our political expert yet.
I appreciate that.
So, were you busy Saturday? Were you hanging out Saturday, hanging out with your socialite friends in Manhattan, maybe off to the Hamptons or something like that? And there's a point to this, so if you can just go along with it. Saturday afternoon, busy time for you?
Not especially that I remember, no.
Well, I was doing something called working. In other words, watching television.
I've heard of that, yes.
Yeah. Most people working, you're working on the roads or homes. For Kevin Miller, working is, my thumb got a little sore from the remote. So I watched the Virginia governor's press conference, news conference, and I was fascinated by it. And I just wondered if you were watching it on Saturday, or I know you've been covering it. We're going to talk about the latest, but I watched it live, and I found it perhaps more entertaining than the first half of the Super Bowl.
Well, that would not be a hard stretch to say that it would be more entertaining than any part of the Super Bowl for most folks, except for you, which I know you would enjoy the ending of that game. However, I did not see it live.
Right.
I saw it afterwards, and all the buzz started to circulate about this, and I was like, wait, what is happening here? Which I think a lot of people did.
Oh, it was so crazy when the reporter said, "Moonwalking, huh? Can you still do it?" And then he was going to do it.
Yeah.
And his wife was about ready to, physically grab him, and then saying about the Michael Jackson stuff and everything else. And now we have the lieutenant governor kind of alleging that the governor's behind some shenanigans. What's going on in Virginia?
Yeah, he hasn't said, I mean, he's not coming out and saying, yeah, I believe they're behind this, but he is also not really giving an answer when he's been asked that question, point blank of, do you think that the governor's behind this? He kind of gotten around it. But the thing that's going on, like, right now is the fact that he's sort of, like, hunkered down with, his advisors and staff members and people like that to take a look and see, okay, is there any way forward? Is there, what needs to be the path here? And so that's it's sort of like a holding pattern, honestly.
Right. And then you have every major Democrat, almost every major Democrat, I think the only ones missing are the Clintons and the Obamas, saying that the governor needs to go.
Yeah, nearly all of the state's Democrats, the establishment, has turned against him. And, like I said, he's been trying to figure out how to navigate the fallout. It's sort of when you've lost the faith of your party that way, it's going to be interesting to see what he thinks he can do and how he can overcome this.
This story led every Sunday morning show. Okay, the Virginia governor, I get it, close to D.C., but why is this story so important?
I think it's important over the fact that, first of all, it's a Democrat. I think that's definitely part of the, interest in the story. Obviously, anything political like this would be. It's a racist photo. And I think the other thing is the story, changed. I mean, he at first said, okay, yeah, this is me in this picture. And then he came back and said, no, this is not me. But there was this other time, so I think that it's just sort of been like a really interesting thing to watch as far as what his reaction to this is.
Right.
This is also coming after last week, which I think most people have forgotten about by now, but the end of last week, it was all the talk that he had basically been accused of supporting infanticide because of the video that one of the legislators there in Virginia had been asked a question about the loosening of the abortion rights in that state, and he kind of came out and supported that, but it wasn't. The thing that people got out of that was, he's supporting infanticide because he believes that the child can be killed right up to the moment of birth.
Right.
And so there was a lot of talk about that. And then, of course, this happens on the heels of that. So it's to say that he's had a pretty rough political 7 days or so would be an understatement.
A point Rich Lowry made, and you are many, many, many years younger than I am, but I'm going to ask you to stretch yourself a little. Okay. And in your studies and in your reporting and in your research, Rich Lowry made a point on Meet the Press where I don't know if it was a half-hearted defense of the governor, but he said, I'm a little concerned that we're judging someone in today's standards, and this is a recurring theme in the world that we live in today, from the standards of 30-some years ago. What do you make of that? America was there, and they said it was 1984, not 1964. We don't remember 64. I remember 84. Your thoughts? The thoughts of, I guess, the people that you cover on this, this story.
That's a good question, and it's one of those not easily answered other than to say that I think a lot of this depends on the response of someone whenever something like this comes out. How do you respond to it? Do you respond by saying, I have no idea what that is about, that wasn't me? If it's really not you,
sure,
and you don't have anything in your past to suggest that you would have done this, then that's one thing. If you do, how you go from there is
sure
a huge factor. Do you say, okay, this was me, that is not who I am. Now, here is the work I can show that I have done since then.
Right, and finally, as our former political expert, I'm sure the campaign of Ed Gillespie, the Republicans and everybody else are so disappointed Gillespie ran against Northam that they missed this opposition research.
Yeah, you got to wonder why this has just now been seen. I mean, this is not something that, was hidden. I mean, a lot of people get a yearbook. You know what I mean? I would think if you're running a political campaign, and I'm as I said, I'm not a political analyst or an expert, but if it just kind of goes to stands to reason, if you're running a campaign like that,
right,
in your opposition research, that's one of the things that would be easily looked at. Everybody has a copy of a yearbook. They're usually, kept in the school. You can get a hold of one online. I mean, it's not that hard to find.
Right. No, I guess, and you put it into perspective here. On one hand, you have the yearbook photo with the blackface and the Klansman. He said it was him, then it wasn't, and then the Michael Jackson thing. Again, such a powder keg topic in the world we live in today. I guess that's why everybody led with it. I thought it would be a preview of the State of the Union, but obviously this is a big issue that continues to resonate.
Oh yeah, it will until this is resolved.
There you have it, our non-political expert.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You won the segment here, madam.
I appreciate that.
And by the way, just want to share with you, we're still here.
Oh, what is? I don't.
Just saying, we're still here.
Oh, as you should be.
Fair enough. I'll take it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Donnie J. Powers joining us, Fox News Radio. By the way, it's funny. People are saying when Tom Brady said we're still here, they called that racist as well. Because they're saying that's about America and make America great and everything else. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Speaking of crazy, for all of our friends that want the drugs and the dope legalized, and maybe you go to Oregon, maybe you have a good time, maybe you even get some of the candy. Do you know they have candy now with the dope? You can get anything with dope. You can get a cake baked in dope. People have said, maybe they've said this to you, hey, I'm going to put something in this and you'll never know. And I said, look, I don't want that weed in any of my food. If I want fiber, I'll eat a salad. Well, here we have a disturbing story that sent a little kid to the hospital. Our own Jack Callaghan joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio to give us the details.
Police in Cleveland investigating after 14 children between the ages of 5 and 9 at a Cleveland elementary school complained of feeling ill Monday. 9 of them had to be taken to the hospital. Each of them had been given gummies by 3 fellow students. Police now believe those candies had been infused with the active ingredient in marijuana. The 3 children who passed them out apparently thought they were just sharing candy they'd brought from home with their friends. City prosecutor could be asked to file charges against the adults in the home. Jack Callahan, Fox News.
So there we have it, the pot gummies. So when people say there's not a danger to marijuana, look at the pot gummies. The poor little kids are now sick because somebody did this. It gets better. In other states, in the state of Colorado, they're having trouble with the black market. Why? Because the state has taxed legal marijuana so much that the black market is much cheaper. In fact, as we teased earlier, let's pay it off for you now. Another state is looking to legalize the shrooms.
When it comes to hallucinations, Denver wants to stand alone by decriminalizing magic mushrooms. Supporters of psychedelic mushrooms point to Johns Hopkins University researchers who recommended a reclassification of psilocybin to reflect possible medical benefits. A clinical toxicologist with the Rocky Mountain Poison and Drug Center tells Fox News some of the typical side effects of psychedelics include
seizures, a panic disorder. It could trigger panic. It could trigger a psychotic outbreak.
The Denver mayor's office says it does not support this measure. In Denver, Alicia Acuna, Fox News.
And so it begins. First, the weed, now the shrooms, following the lead from our friends in Oregon. And by the way, if you're living in Oregon, if you're living in a territory that you don't want to be a part of, just move to Idaho. Everybody else is doing it. I know you love your state, but the libs really have taken over that place. They're trying to move in here. We need more conservatives to come into the gem state to save us. Oregon is lost. And by the way, have you noticed with every ounce of energy that the libs have when they're talking about putting their pro-pot propaganda out, it always starts with medical. It always starts with medical. After hearing that, I don't want the shrooms. Do you? 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Proud to be with you, Kevin Miller, in the morning. Let's get to the phones. Holly in Caldwell. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning, Kevin. One of the things I wanted parents to be aware of is there's a device out called the Juul, Juul. It looks like a USB device, and it's like an e-cigarette, but it's fruity flavored and very addictive. And in my opinion, cigarettes and nicotine and all of those things, since they attack all centers of the brain, are even worse than a lot of marijuana and things like that, even though we don't want people to be addicted and causing all kinds of problems for their lives and their families with any kind of substance. But yeah, it's scary that it's fruity flavored, and it plugs into like a USB, and kids could, blow the steam from that into their shirt pocket or whatever, so that the teachers wouldn't even realize they were smoking them in their classroom.
Well, what about the dope and everything else?
I am for medicinal marijuana. I think that the polyester industry did a lot of things and the FDA to get rid of that. They did everything they can to put people in jail for years and years and years for just a crime on that, instead of doing real things to rehabilitate people. I think there's a whole other side to that. I'm not for drug smoking and selling it on every corner. I'm for parents teaching their kids about to care for their body and that their body is the temple. But I do think that there is a big push to not legalize it because of all of the amazing medicinal qualities that herb has.
Holly, thank you for the call. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio in the morning on the e-cigs.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go to our old friend Dave, joining us now from Akron, Ohio, where all good things come from. Good morning, Dave.
Hey, you're right. A lot of good things come from there. You. Hey, happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
Sorry I missed you last year. So
No worries. Appreciate you, my friend. You've known me since before I was born, and I'm
almost.
I'm humbled by your friendship and your mentorship.
So, anyway, how are you?
Still employed.
You sound pretty good on the radio.
I'm no Howie Chiswick.
You're getting there.
Well, thank you.
You're there.
By the way, for people that
don't
know, Howie Chiswick was a legendary talk show host in Akron, Ohio. In fact, listening to Howie as a young boy was the reason why I do this. And when I heard Rush Limbaugh for the first time, I actually thought he was ripping off Howie Chiswick. That's how great he was. He lived in Akron, Ohio his whole life, was the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and dedicated himself to making a difference, and just an incredible talk show host, and wanted to make sure everybody was included in the reference.
I will say this: he is missed here.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
They have not been able to replace his sound and knowledge, as far as I'm concerned. So, anyway, I really just wanted to call to make sure I wished you the best day today. So,
well,
there you are.
I appreciate that, and we all appreciate that, Dave.
I'm listening to your talk about this these cigarette things, and they're even smoking them in the schools here, which is unreal. So they stick them in their shirts, and the teachers, I don't know, I guess the teachers are blind, but they don't even know what they're doing. So anyway.
Well, there's
honestly,
a note for education here this morning. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, education. Anyway, so there you go. Hey, have a wonderful day, all right?
God bless you and your family, my friend. We're humbled to be a part of it.
God bless you also. God bless you all. So thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll talk to you next year.
All right, Dave.
Maybe sooner, I hope.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. All right, we roll on. Pro-Life joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Yes, I'm going to talk about the Medicaid expansion. I believe, and
where were you last half hour?
Well, I was just getting ready. I had to work.
You're warm. Well, I got to work too, but people would rather hear from you than me. So, what about the dope?
Okay, Medicaid-wise. Well, how about dope? No dope, no whatsoever.
All right.
Okay, now in Medicaid expansion, about 80% of our legislature is Republican, and I'm telling you that about 75% of those, maybe 80% of them, all of them, voted against Medicaid expansion in the ballot booth personally. And I'm expecting that they should do the same thing down at the legislature, and we won't even have the Medicaid expansion. It's communist medicine. There's not any provision for it in our state constitution. We should just not go along with it. I mean, the people and our former governor he recommended it, but he's a mushhead, and so we.
Now wait a minute. You're saying first he's a wimp, and now you're calling him a mushhead?
Yes, a wimpy mushhead.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway.
Now remember, that was pro-life, not Kevin Miller that said that.
Right. So anyway, we just, those people need medicine. I mean, people need a lot of things.
Yeah, you're right about that.
But government is not created to give everything to everybody.
God bless pro-life. I got to run.
All right.
Bye-bye.